Right, finally back to FAB 2.0. Okay, so today we will discuss cold foils. Right, so cold foils, by and large, uh, sorry to say, I guess, are not what they used to be. Right, so cold foils in the first initial block of Flesh and Blood are beloved, right, across the board, common all the way to the Fabled cards. And simply put, that's because at the time, it was a new style of printing, was a uncontested style of printing, and of course they were overall valued higher in the community, especially when it came to obviously commons and rares and playability. The big issue plaguing the majority of cold foils, again, when I say majority, I mean the lower end, is that they are unplayable, right? Equipment by and large in the common and rare slot are useless. As we get later and later into sets, they just are not feasible for playing. Okay, in terms of drafting, well, you don't really care because you'll generally find other normal equipment. If you find a cold foil, cool. You might draft it because it's useful. You might not draft it and not really be a miss. And again, as we keep going over, the market is heavily dictated by playability. So if they're not playable, despite being one in a box, they're not going to hold any real value out of that box, right? Skewing used to be towards the cold foil. The cold foil was what helped average out the expected value of your box, whereas now it is a dollar card most of the time. Okay, if you find a common or rare, it's only going to be worth a few dollars. And then, as I was saying before, about being uncontested when it came to printing, at the time of initiation, right? Cold foils were unique, were new, were special. No other company was really touching etched printing at that point in time. Nowadays, though, that's obviously not the case. A lot of companies have advanced, a lot of different TCGs have adopted all new manner of fancy printing. And although to me, cold foils are beautiful, cold foils are tasteful, the issue is that they are underappreciated, if you will, against the board when it comes to new aged foiling. So the majority of new foils are over the top, spectacular, gaudy pieces of artwork, right? Again, that's my opinion. I do like the textured foiling, but think of like Pokemon, right? You've got rainbow foil, reverse foil, normal foil, etched foil, raised foil, trainer foil, essentially all these different foilings that just drown out, seeing a cold foil card. Like, you look at a cold foil card, and yes, to some it will look beautiful, but to others they'll go, well, I could get something very similar in Pokemon that is even shinier. Okay, so in terms of market supply, there are just way too many other printing techniques available across the board for cold foils to be appreciated as what they were when they first came out. So by and large, these two core factors have led to the downfall, if you will, of cold foils, and this idea of keeping them scarce at 1.24 and still making it relevant, right? In terms of this reprint policy, I'm sure none of us would really care if cold foil commons and rares were reprinted. They don't have enough value that you could really sink the market, right? They're already abysmal. Because again, the collector aspect of the game is dwindling, right? Yes, there's high collectability in the highest of end cards, but across the board, we've lost collectability when it comes to pull rates, right? Finding a cold foil in a box is not good enough. Finding a certain Marvel might not be good enough. Finding a certain legendary will be less than any other legendary, and so forth and so on. And by and large, I think what was sort of missed when it came to increasing the rarity of cold foil legendaries was increasing the rarity of cold foils across the board. While overall, I would probably advocate for the opposite, right, in terms of the overall ratios, had they had made normal cold foils rarer. I think that would have been a big enough chase to allow them to still hold some degree of value. Maybe not, obviously, like the $50 to $100 in the first few sets, but potentially, make them a $20 card. By and large, have all the common cold foils be, $10 plus. Now, again, from my perspective, what I would like to see is that this overall amount of boxes that is necessary to open to achieve these high-end chases brought down. right? I would like to see rainbow foils potentially 1 in a box, cold foils back, cold foil legendaries back to their 1 in 4, and well, that would probably make that cold foil commons would be even more frequent. I think that would actually be pretty neat, right? I would give a lot more incentive to run full cold foil. No, what am I saying? There is no incentive because, again, they're not playable, right? Oh, that is just the main issue again. That FAB 2.0 has overcorrected away from collectability to just playability. And by and large, a lot of cards, if they're not playable, are not of any value. That's it. I would like something to happen to make cold foils as spectacular as they used to be across the board. I don't just mean in terms of legendaries, in terms of marbles, but to, again, make cold foils feel as special as they should be, right? If cold foil commons were increased in terms of pull rate, they're already not worth much to anyone. If they were made, 3 times rarer, 1 in 3 boxes, I think that we as a community could appreciate them a lot more, even if they're not playable. Or, of course, the other avenue to simply trend down is larger support for Commoner, larger support for accessible variations of the game's main format in the competitive scene, if you will. Right, so whether or not Commoner is played at your LGS, at your local store, if Commoner saw a lot more support for competitive play, right, being part of the main circuit, then by and large, a lot of cards would see a huge uptick in value because, again, the secondary market is so skewed towards what is playable. And I am hoping that that is sort of what we see next year is, again, the continued expansion of the competitive side of things. I know for a lot of people, right, PvE has always been on the back of everyone's mind, but it does seem to be getting delayed more and more. I honestly, personally, I don't want to see PvE till the competitive scene is fully fleshed out, and that includes support for all the different formats. Where is PvE? Right, so PvE will be our flagship social play product, and truth be told, I think just continuing to support play across the board, social and competitive, in terms of normal flesh and blood, is the better objective to focus on, even if it does mean PvE is continued to be delayed. The other side of that, since we are sort of getting off topic, right, there wasn't really too much to talk about in cold foils, is when it comes to PvE, when it comes to balancing between normal set design and PvE design, the issue is the living legend sort of rotation, right? Because if any hero and the cards that occupy its pool are restricted from play, it has a huge impact on the game in both terms of the meta and the secondary market. So balancing sets around the expectation that X hero is going to be removed from play is going to be an issue, right? So Dusk Till Dawn reintroduces Light Illusionist and Shadow Runeblade, but when it comes to, say, Oldheim or Briar, right, so Elemental Guardian and Elemental Runeblade, well, they need support because they are so close. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of us expect them to be on the Living Legend status by the end of this season, which means that a few things need to happen, right? Either they are reprinted to some degree, or again, when it comes to the competitive scene and support next year, we see the addition of the Living Legend format, or we see the addition of Commoner, and have them be playable in either of those aspects. But yeah, so, although we've gone off topic, when it comes to PvE, when it comes to continuing to support competitive play, I do think that competitive play has to take the precedent at this point in time, because again, how much the market is determined by playability, and how much has already been put into that aspect of the game. I'm sure a lot of us are itching for PvE to be released in whatever format it comes out, or even just some sort of news towards it, but again, it will heavily skew things, because it will take away from the competitive scene that is currently at the forefront of Flesh and Blood. But yeah, to sum up, we'll go back to cold foils, right? What do you think about cold foil commons, cold foil rares? What is the best solution? Do you think it's simply increase the pull rates? Do you think that making them useful in some manner, be it Commoner, in terms of an actual competitive format, is necessary? Or are you completely fine with how they are? Are you happy finding a cold foil in a box and chucking it aside because it's simply only a few dollars in the most case?